You're listening to the Armchair Cricket Podcast.
Hello, all. Welcome to another episode of Armchair Cricket Podcast.
I'm your host, Ajit. My co-host, Giri, is away on other work. Therefore, I'll be a host for this episode.
We have had a lot of interesting Test cricket in the recent couple of weeks. And one specific series from that was the England versus New Zealand series. And in order to help us unpack how the series went, we have James from the Full Toss blog joining us. Hello, James. Welcome.
No problem. Hello. How are you?
I'm doing good, James. How are you seeing the weather now? I think winter is coming now.
Yeah, it's pretty horrible outside.
All right.
You can probably imagine. It's England. It's December. It's going to be horrible.
Well, all the leaves are gone, and we've not yet seen some snow here. I don't know if you already saw some.
Not yet. Not too much. I saw on the news it's been snowing in the mountains in Australia, which seems a bit bizarre because I always associate Australia with being really, really warm. But yeah, no, it's just frost at the moment. Scraping off the car in the morning before the school run is a great pleasure.
Now I can imagine. It's also the first day of negative temperature in the year today here, and yeah, public transport come a little bit of a halt and so on and so on. So we are pushing on, I guess. It's more or less the same weather, but yeah, we have some Test cricket to keep us warm, I'm sure. So
yeah,
before we get into the some of the good talking points, maybe let's take a quick look at the result. Of course, New Zealand took the series 1-0. This is because they won the first test that happened at Mount Maunganui. So it was a very instructive test because it was very old school. It was not one of these 3-day, 4-day affairs that we see a lot of. It properly went into the last day, and more than half a day of the last day was also used.
Yeah.
So it's more like, Stokes who made 91, Denley who made 74, a bunch of other good contributions, Rory Burns 52 and so on. But, when New Zealand batted, they were in a bit of trouble. But Watling and the lower middle order had a different idea of their own. So Watling made a 205. Colin de Grandhomme 65, and then Santner 126. Between these three people, they batted and sort of, old school Test cricket where they grind the opposition into the dust. And when it came their turn to bat, England put a good resistance, but it was enough overs left in the match for New Zealand to enforce the result, and they were able to do that. This was the first test. So in the second test, which was played in Hamilton, in Seddon Park, Hamilton, again, New Zealand batted first in this case, and they made 375, sort of a comparative score when it comes to the first test, first innings. And England also made a very solid reply. They came up with 476. In this case, Rory Burns made a maiden hunt, and of course, Joe 226, at least temporarily silencing so many of those critics of his. Ollie Pope made some supporting them, and 476 and 100 run lead was very good, I think. But in return, New Zealand batted very sensibly with, even though they lost their openers sort of cheaply. Ken Williamson made 100, and so did Ross Taylor, and they sort of shut the door firmly on England. It was almost a formality after, about midday on the last day, and they made sure they took up all the time before rains arrived, and that was that. Right, so New Zealand won the series as deservedly, we can say, maybe. And so these were, let's say, the results in a nutshell. But we go over some of the talking points. I think one of your latest blog articles does a very nice job, shining the light on some nice topics. Would you like to go into them for us?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because this 2-test series isn't included in the World Test Championship. And although I'm sure that England really, really wanted to win the series because they have a new coach in Chris Silverwood, there was a bit of a kind of a developmental feel to the tour, in that England wanted to see how some new players would go. And we were hoping to learn quite a lot. And that, although New Zealand were favourites, I don't think a lot of England fans particularly expected us to win. So losing wasn't a huge disappointment, but the disappointing thing for me is that we didn't really learn that much. It was kind of same old for England away. England are a very good Test team in home conditions when they have the Duke ball and it swings around corners. But when we go overseas, we do struggle to take wickets. And our batsmen, fantastic in one-day cricket, but they don't necessarily have the aptitude for bat for long periods of time in Test cricket. And I think really that's my overriding feeling about this tour is that almost it was an opportunity missed, I think, for England to find out more about some of these younger players. And it was pretty much standard fare.
Indeed. Well, when we talk about younger players, they did bring in a few.
Yeah.
So Dom Sibley debuted.
Mhm.
Ollie Pope got another go, right? Jofra Archer is still a bit green behind his ears. So, and Joe Denley has experienced, a first-class cricketer he is. He's sort of still new in the setup, right? So you had all of these. Do we do just the England team as one in transition, maybe?
Yeah, it's difficult though, because the England Test team has been in transition for several years now, and that's the thing. The results are quite erratic. They've said that after the World Cup, because the thing with English cricket is that they really wanted to win the World Cup at home, and England have always underperformed in World Cups. Well, they have done for a long time, and they desperately wanted to win that World Cup, and because of that first-class cricket, and the Test team almost took a bit of a back seat. So now they're saying that Test cricket is going to be prioritised again, and that they're going to aim to put out a very competitive side in the Ashes down under in a couple of years' time. So they really have to start building now. They say it's a team in transition. Well, they've got to kind of turn it around quite quickly, because there's some tough Test matches coming up, and obviously the ultimate tests will come in India and in Australia. And unless we get our act together quite quickly, we're going to get thrashed in those countries. So there's a lot of hard work to do.
They went into the tour with a couple of conundrums that they would have liked to have solved. So if we were to begin from the bowling end of it, is there life after Anderson and Broad would be one of the questions, I guess, right? Anderson is very near the end of his career, if not his career has already ended. We don't know yet. And the exciting Jofra Archer. Do you see this England attack really being successful both at home and away?
I think they'll always be successful at home, because English cricket is stocked with medium-fast seamers who are accurate and swing the ball. And not a lot of visiting sides play the swinging ball particularly well. So England will always be competitive in home conditions. I think when we go away from home, we need more pace in the attack. Jofra Archer is obviously a step in the right direction, but he can't do it on his own, and he is still learning. He's played relatively little first-class cricket, let alone Test cricket. Right. But there is hope. We do have some younger bowlers around who have a little bit of pace. There's people like Ollie Stone, and of course there's Mark Wood as well, who performed very well in the World Cup. But the problem is keeping them fit. I think that if England can keep these young fast bowlers fit, then they'll be competitive. But that it's a big if.
Indeed. Well, I mean, what about Chris Wokes? Has he come along as well as one would have liked, given that he's been around this setup for 3 to 4 years and been playing Test cricket both home and abroad?
Yeah, Chris Wokes is an admirable cricketer. He's actually a very good batsman as well. Australia sorted him out with the short ball a little bit, but he is a good all-round cricketer. And he's got plenty of admirers in England. But I think at this point, though, that with Chris Wokes, I don't think there's a lot of development to be done. I think we're seeing, peak Wokes now. And again, he kind of symbolises the problem with England generally, in that he's a good bowler at home, when it swings around with the Duke's ball. But when he goes overseas, he's he can bowl accurately, but he's not very effective. He's not very penetrative. And that's a problem. And really, you can't get rid of a cricketer like Chris Wokes and just put him in the garbage pile. But England do need to start looking beyond orthodox right arm, fast medium seamers if they want to be successful overseas. So there is a case for moving on from people like Chris Wokes. But of course, the question is there anyone better who is fit?
What of Sam Curran then?
Sam Curran really divides opinion. For a lot of, because he's young and fresh-faced and enthusiastic, and he's scored runs down the order. And he has picked up wickets now and again. He's kind of like a bit of a darling for a lot of fans. But a lot of England fans remain quite sceptical as well. He's not particularly tall. He's not particularly quick. He can be effective if the ball swings. But, long term, he might end up being more of a batting all-rounder than a bowling all-rounder. He's a cricketer of immense potential. But we just have to kind of wait and see how he develops. He's not an opening bowler at this point. I doubt he ever will be. But if he can score runs, I can see him playing a valuable role as maybe fourth seamer, and maybe a bit more than that at home. Yeah, it's difficult. I think again, England, with Sam Curran, are just going to have to take it on a match by match basis and see what the conditions are. I can't see him playing too much in the subcontinent because England will bring in another spinner and maybe only pick a couple of seamers. But the thing about Sam Curran is he offers quite a lot, but at this current time, before he's older and developed, you kind of wonder if he's good enough at either batting or bowling to warrant a place in the side. I think potentially he could be, but at this current point in his development, it's kind of difficult to say.
So that brings us to the spinner question. Is Jack Leach good enough to be the lone spinner in the 11 for all conditions, do you think?
Jack Leach has been getting a lot of stick, and at Mount Maunganui in the first test in New Zealand, he didn't have his best game. He kept the runs down and offered the captain control, but he didn't look that penetrative with the ball. But it's really important that we don't judge Jack Leach on the back of one bad game. He still averages 29 in Test cricket in his first 10 tests. Graham Swan averaged 29.9 at the end of his career. So for Leach to be averaging 29 after 10 tests, I think is a really, really good return and a great start to his Test career. I think he is a good bowler, Jack Leach. I think that we need to persevere with our young spinners. So I would certainly be giving him more opportunities. I think it's really, he should never have been dropped for that final test. I thought that was harsh. And, as you may know, England picked 5 seamers for that second test, which was, idiocy, really. The jury's out with Leach, just like any young cricketer, but he's shown a lot of promise. And I personally wouldn't be going back to Moeen Ali. Moeen Ali is just a bit too erratic for me. He can take wickets, Moeen, but he also doesn't really offer the captain control, and he was dropped for a reason. I think we now need to give Jack Leach a prolonged run to see if he can be better. And at the moment, he's done well. He outbowled Nathan Lyon in the Ashes, taking his wickets at 26, whereas Lyon took his at 33. And he did well in Sri Lanka too. So, I think that Jack Leach has got some potential.
Indeed. Now, he can be a lead spinner. And when it comes to Moeen Ali, he can be your second spinner. I don't think he should be given the role of the lead spinner. I know he has Test 5 hours. He's won matches against India.
Yeah, no. If Moeen's going to be a second spinner, he's probably going to need to score more runs because he was, he'll need to be playing a proper all-rounders role. But Moeen's an incredibly talented all-round cricketer and a brilliant batsman to watch when he's on form. But his lack of form with the bat was one of the reasons why he was dropped, and he is vulnerable against the short ball. And if England are building towards those Ashes in a couple of years' time, I can't see Moeen really troubling them with bat or ball. And I think that's kind of a problem for Moeen. And I'm a big Moeen fan because he plays for Worcestershire, who are my county. But I think we need to run with Leach. Maybe there'll be a role for Moeen as a second spinner, but if he's going to play as a second spinner, I think he needs to be scoring runs too.
Indeed. How about the young leggy who was brought on for Parkinson's?
Yeah, he's an interesting bowler, actually. It's a bit of a shame because he toured it. He was in the Test squad and in the 2020 squad in New Zealand. So he was in New Zealand for a couple of months, and he only actually bowled, I think, about 6 overs. He played in a couple of the T20s and actually did well. But then we didn't hear from him again. He was just kind of walking around making people cups of tea, I think, for the rest of the tour. But he is quite an exciting cricketer. But again, he hasn't played too many games. So it's important not to build him up and put too much pressure and expectation on him. But the times I've seen him, I've been quait impressed. He looks quite a gutsy spin bowler, which leggies have got to have that kind of confidence. He does give the ball some air. So yeah, I'll watch his career with interest.
Indeed. I mean, England could really do with a leggy, a good one, or a decent one for sure. And he's very young, and he looked brave. He looked the part. He looked like an old school test spinner who relies on drift and bounce and turn. So let's see how that goes. And I'm really hoping he comes through and becomes the second spinner, eventually the first spinner for England. Maybe I think we should now talk about some of the serious points then. So the keeping conundrum is Pope. The choice of Pope, was it right? I mean, again over a full-time keeper. No Ben Fox in the squad, and Johnny Bairstow has been asked to go back and score more runs, sort of get back to form.
I think we need to forget all about Ollie Pope ever keeping again. He did a good job. He's not a keeper. He's only kept in about 5 first-class games, and he's actually Surrey's third choice wicketkeeper. He only played because England made the mistake of only picking, one keeper in the squad because they only took 14 men because it was only 2 tests. And then, of course, when Jos Buttler got injured, Pope had to keep wicket. But Ollie Pope really needs to focus on his batting. So really, England have to choose between Buttler, Bairstow, and Ben Foakes. And a lot of the purists really want to see Ben Foakes in the side because he is by far the best wicketkeeper of the three. The problem is the management don't seem to think he's as good a batsman as either Bairstow or Buttler. I think that Bairstow has done a good job over the years, but he wasn't scoring many runs. I was hoping actually that England would turn to Foakes then, but they gave the gloves to Buttler. Because I think Butler's a favourite of Ed Smith, the national selector. But Buttler is a serviceable keeper. He's good enough in one days. I don't think he's got the most natural hands that I've seen as a keeper, Buttler. But, he has batted fairly well since his recall into the side. I think any of those three could be serviceable and could do a good job. And I think it's just really a judgment call on which one you prefer.
Indeed. For me, folks should have played in this tour. At least he should have toured and been on hand if required, right?
Yeah.
I think he was injured, and that was one of the periods where they chose Buttler when Johnny Bairstow was sort of not doing very well with the bat and sort of lost his mojo. But let's see. I mean, I wouldn't completely count Bairstow out of the reckoning. He can force his way back in as a keeper of the squad. And he has a lot to offer with the bat anyway. He's played 60 plus tests, so there's a lot of experience there. So let's see how the England selectors shape up. But ideally, the best glove man should have the gloves. But I joke about it in the other episodes as well. England sometimes have as many keepers in the 11 as fast bowlers, but it doesn't matter as long as the right keeper has the game. And I don't know if Bairstow can hold his own purely as a batter.
Yeah, I think he can. A lot of people think that he might be able to bat as high as 3. I'm not so sure. I think he's more of a kind of a 5 or 6 or possibly 7 if he's got the gloves. But Johnny Bairstow is an interesting one because he's a cricketer that I really, really like. But when he decided to focus on white ball cricket to break into the England World Cup squad, he kind of changed his technique a little bit. He started hitting through the offside a lot more, and he got very good at that. And now he's a fantastic white ball player. But in doing so, he kind of played around with his technique and he lost his defence. I think that if Johnny wants to score runs in Test cricket again, he needs to work on his technique. And in fact, he's out in South Africa now ahead of the tour, working on his technique. And I think he will be back. I think he will.
What do you think of
Denley, and whether he's done enough to hold the spot down for a couple of seasons, if he may?
Yeah, Joe Denley's an interesting cricketer. I loved him when he first came on the scene. He played for the England Lions for the first time about 10 years ago, and he looked like a young batsman of immense promise. I remember seeing him pulling Brett Lee and hooking Brett Lee all over the shop in a game for the Lions against Australia when Brett Lee was bowling quickly. But then he sort of lost his way and kind of got lost a bit on the county circuit. Now he's kind of justifying his place in the order. I think 3 is a good spot for him because he's decent against the new ball. I think he can do a job for a couple of years. And besides, it's kind of academic anyway. He's in the side. He's done well, and therefore we should stick with him until he doesn't. I think he deserves a run, and age doesn't matter if you're scoring the runs. And Denley hasn't scored loads and loads of runs, but he's got a few half centuries. And England have had so many problems with their number 3. I think if they can just find a number 3 who averages in the mid-30s, I think most supporters would take that at the moment.
He's putting all that experience he has gained to good use. Maybe you get 2 or 3 good seasons out of him. Who knows, right? So I totally agree there with you. So then comes the opening conundrum. So maybe Rory Burns has sort of nailed his place down. He's done well both away and at home. But Dominic Sibley, do you think
Yeah.
he's ready?
Yeah, I mean, we can't tell after just the 3 innings. He didn't look brilliant, actually, but it's still early days. I mean, Graham Gooch got a pair on his Test debut. Sibley's played 3 innings. It's hard to tell. A lot of people are saying that he's he looks to score on the leg side a bit too much and that he doesn't have an offside game. But I find that incredibly difficult to believe that someone can score as many runs as Sibley has in first-class cricket without being able to play through the offside at all. I think that once if he can actually get in and build an innings, then we'll see that he can play all around the wicket. But time will tell with Sibley. He's young enough. He's scored enough runs, and if somebody scores the weight of runs that Sibley has done in county cricket, they deserve an opportunity to prove themselves. England can't just keep swapping every game. They need to give him a good run.
I think so. Look, when it comes to left-hander and openers going too far back, there were 2 very successful ones, right? Certain Sir Alistair Cook wasn't too bad.
I seem to remember him. Yeah.
I'm more looking at temperament and technique, and this guy Dom Sibley shows that at least he has a bit of fight in him, and definitely give him more tests, not 2 innings or 3 innings, and maybe a couple of tours. Unfortunately, he's starting off with a tour not at home, but that's fine too, right? I mean, I parked the last question, or the most, let's say, tough question for the end. It was Joe Root. So do you think, first of all, Joe Root at 4, and the other one, should Joe Root be the captain?
Yeah, that's the big question in English cricket. First of all, I'm definitely in the Root at 4 camp. Statistically, he averages a lot more at number 4 than he does at number 3, or indeed as he did as an opener. I think that Joe Root is an ideal number 4 in the side, and that's where he should stay. We can argue whether there's something technical that means that he scores more runs at 4 than 3 or opening. I think potentially there he does defend a lot of balls sort of towards gully and point. But I think it's probably more of a mental thing with Root. He just feels comfortable at 4, and therefore that's where he should bat. Whether he should be captain, if he was appointed England captain, like most England captains these days, he didn't have a lot of experience of captaining sides in county cricket. So he's kind of learning on the job. And thus far, he hasn't showed any particular aptitude. He hasn't shown that he can be a great captain. He makes some curious decisions with who he opens the bowling with at the beginning of sessions. But the problem is, who else is there? Root is the senior player, and there are very few alternatives. So I think that to take the captaincy off Joe Root would be a brave move, because we're not quite sure who else could do it. So I think we're probably going to stick with Root. And there we go.
Well, for me, look, at least we'll have more runs from him, right? And I don't want him to lose that sheen. I don't want him to not be the best batsman in the team anymore. That's more concerning to me. And for me, look, captaincy, he's still a bit reactive. He's not proactive enough. And one of the things you pointed out was indeed sort of the bowlers he starts off in sessions. Sometimes he looks a bit clueless. I think Joss Butler might be more of a captaincy. He might have more nous for the job. Mm-hmm. And how about Stuart Broad for a stopgap for 2 seasons, maybe 1.5, 2 seasons? Would that work at all?
I think the problem with both Butler and Broad is that they're not actually dead certs to play. Stuart Broad is, people write him off and he always comes back strongly, but particularly away from home and in this last series in New Zealand, Stuart Broad bowled accurately, but unless he's kind of bowling at 85 miles an hour plus and he's in rhythm, he can look innocuous at times. And if England are trying to get more pace into their side, Broad might struggle to hold down a place, especially if Jimmy Anderson comes back in South Africa. So that's kind of the problem with Stuart Broad. Although I have advocated him being captain in the past, I'm now having second thoughts. Joss Butler, I agree with you. I think he could be a captain. I think England see a lot in him, and I think ideally they'd like him to nail down his spot. But there are just so many question marks over whether Joss plays as a batsman or whether he plays as a keeper. And then long term, with Ollie Pope coming through, England might have to choose between Pope and Butler at some point. If Butler's, is it ideal to make Butler a captain? The captain's got to play, and then that might hold back a young Ollie Pope. So it's very difficult. There are alternatives to Root as captain, but they're just not great ones, at least not at this present time.
the way I see it, it's Root's captaincy for the foreseeable future, at least a couple more tours, let's say.
If you were to look ahead, what do you think of England's tour to South Africa?
Yeah, South Africa are in a bit of turmoil at the moment, aren't they? I think that England have got a really good chance, although England don't travel particularly well. I just think that South Africa aren't as strong as they used to be, and therefore it could be one of these topsy-turvy series between two sides that aren't particularly good at the moment. I think both sides are capable of winning that. If England play well and get runs on the board, I guess they could win, but they will need to play well.
I somehow back England to take the series in South Africa.
But when it comes to South Africa,
I don't see enough good options with bowling or batting. That's a problem. If one of them is weak, maybe the other one will show you up, you can say. In a test match on a 5-day long stretch, you will be found out. Even if one of them is not good, you'll be found out, let alone if both of them are not good. That's the only problem I see with South Africa. There's nobody really carrying the batting. The bowling, of course, Stein is gone, and they're definitely in transition there. They have lost a couple of really good bowlers to call PAK deals and other things. But it's up to them. There's always Rabada.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
Philander is on and off, hot and cold, depends. At home, he's always very good. So you never know if it's Philander's series. Who knows? He can still turn it around for South Africa. I would back England to take the series, maybe 1-0 or so. And with that one being a part of the Test match championships, there is this sort of exhibition game or trying to work things out. Sort of a thing is out, so they will need the points. So they'll want to win. Both teams will want to win. So that'll make more compelling viewing for me. So, do you have anything to add, James?
No, I think we've pretty much covered it. The one thing I'd like to underline is that please, England, never pick 5 seamers in a test match again. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Don't do it. 5 will never do it. 4 can't. But anyway, there we go.
I mean, it would have been harsh. I would have said play Leach ahead of Sam Curran because you need somebody to toss the ball up. Root doesn't do it. Dilly didn't, and whenever he did, he got hit. So, yeah, that was unfortunate. So, anyway, let's see. But all in all, as an England fan, are you looking forward to the next 6 to 8 months on how the Test match team and even the limited overs teams will do?
Yeah, I mean, it could be. In England, go to Sri Lanka as well. So it's going to be interesting times. And we've heard in the media that England might be bringing in Keaton Jennings, of all people, as a specialist opening batsman who plays spin well for that tour, which is kind of interesting. So we live in curious times, and following England is certainly never dull.
Well, swap one ugly left-handed opener for another. I'm hoping Dom Sibley does his bit right there, right? We'll see how things shape up come the Sri Lanka tour. So, I would like to say thanks for your participation and, your very valuable insights.
Thank you. No, it's a pleasure. It's great to be joining you for the first time. And, I might be back one day, hopefully. I don't know.
No, indeed. So we would very much want to have your inputs again. And maybe we would do other sections of podcast as well. We'll see how things go. But do you have anything to plug, James?
Yeah, just to say, if you want to read about English cricket, come to The Full Toss, www.thefulltoss.com, and you can follow us on Twitter as well, which is @TheFullToss, and you'll find us on Facebook as well. So that'd be great.
Great. Thanks a lot. And yeah, let's hope we can again do one more review of an England series or another series shortly in the future. Thanks a lot, James.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
If you were to take a quick look at some of the other test match cricket that's been going on, so we can have a quick look at the Afghanistan versus West Indies test, which the West Indian team won quite comfortably. So this was a bit of a one-sided affair. It was held in Lucknow's Atal Bihari Vajpayee Ekana Cricket Stadium. In this case, Afghanistan batted first, made just 187, thanks to 39 by Javed Ahmadi, and then a bit of a lower order resistance with the keeper Afsar Zazai making 32 and Amir Hamza, the spinner, making 34 to lift them to 187. Rakim Cornwall, the off spinner, took 7 for 75 in the first innings. In response, West Indies made 277. So this was a bit of a fight in the innings with Shamar Brooks making 100, John Campbell making 55, and then Shane Dowrich making 42. This meant West Indies were comfortably ahead with about 90 runs. So this was always going to be tough for Afghanistan. Amir Hamza also started the ball for them, taking a 5-4 in his debut test. Rashid Khan picked up 3 and Zahir Khan had picked up 2 wickets. In response, Afghanistan could not really put up much of a total in the second innings. Javed Ahmadi held the innings together at the top with 62. But apart from the other opener, Ibrahim Zadran, there was really nobody to support him. And in the second innings, the West Indian spinners, Rahim Cornwall and Roston Chase, took 3 for each, and Jason Holder took the other 3 wickets. In this case, this meant Rahim Cornwall had taken a 10 for, right? So this is a very good analysis for Cornwall, and a very good talent has come up for West Indian cricket that could serve West Indian cricket for a long time, especially Test matches. West Indies chased down the 30 runs very easily without too much of ado there. And that meant, West Indies won this one-off test. As far in few tests that Afghanistan get, I think this is a very important step in their learning curve as well. And this was acknowledged by Rashid Khan in the post-match interview. He said, the more tests they get to play, the better they learn and faster they learn. So there is a case for Ireland, Afghanistan, and to an extent even Zimbabwe probably to get together and play as many tests as possible. Even though they're outside the, let's say, the ICC Test Championship, there is a good chance for them to play and improve the standard of their cricket and learn about Test match cricket and learn how to pace an innings and those sort of things. This was not seen in this Test match for Afghanistan, and that's something they'll have to work on in the long term. Taking a quick look at the other Test match, this was the Australia versus Pakistan second Test that happened in Adelaide Oval. This was a day-night Test. So this was characterized by a very, very special innings of 335 not out by David Warner. Marnus Labuschagne scored 162. So in this case, Australia made a mammoth 589 for 3 declared in very quick time. And that meant Pakistan were under the pressure immediately after the first innings. They chose to bring Mohammad Abbas back as we had all expected. But surprisingly, they gave Mohammad Musa a debut ahead of Naseem Shah, while Shaheen Shah Afridi was retained, of course. So this meant, the pace bowling attack was all right, but there was not a lot of bite in it. And it turned out that way, that all the 3 wickets that fell were taken by Shaheen Shah Afridi. And even though Mohammad Abbas was able to keep the runs down, he was not very penetrative. And Mohammad Musa, the debutant, was a bit costly. Yasir Shah was also a bit costly. In fact, he went for more than 6 an over his 30 overs, and that was very strange to see for a spinner of his quality. I think he needs a more supporting sort of a field, but also I think he needs to identify the right lengths to be bowling on Australian pitches. So it was a bit of both happening there. But that basically meant, Pakistan were right up against it, and they batted well in the first innings. So Babar Azam came to the party again, scoring 97, missing out on another 100 in consecutive tests. But his 97 was really good. And then Yasir Shah scored 100. He made up with the bat what he missed with the ball. And with a little bit of lower order resistance, made sure Pakistan made at least 302 runs in the first innings. But this was not enough to avoid a follow-on. In the Australian bowling analysis, so Mitchell Starc took 6 for 66, and then Pat Cummins took 3 for 83. This meant, Pakistan was following on, and Shan Masood showed a bit of fight in the second innings. He made 68, and then Asad Shafiq made a 57 as well. There was a little bit of middle order resistance with, Iftikhar Ahmed scoring 27 and Mohammad Rizwan scoring 45 as well. But Pakistan were only able to total 239. That meant, they lost the test by an innings and 48 runs. Again, in the second innings, Nathan Lyon took a 5 for, and Josh Hazelwood took 3 wickets. So Nathan Lyon again came to the fore, having been quiet right through the series here. So all in all, it was a bit of a disappointing tour for Pakistan, I must say, because, in response, Azhar Ali has come out and said it's hurt Pakistan's pride, and rightfully so, because they were a very strong touring team in the 80s and early 90s with a very, very good pace attack, and they were always formidable wherever they toured. And there was always a bit of fight that was shown by the batsmen. To be frank, in this tour, the batsmen did their bit. The batsmen were not caught wanting, and they were not bundled out for under 200 every time or something. So in this case, probably the bowling team has to put up their hand and say, we let the team down. And there is a bit of learning there for the young pace attack. And they can probably, if they can remember the lessons that they learned on this tour, it will serve them really well in the upcoming years, because the entire pace attack looked very raw. And Yasir Shah looked a bit off color right through both the tests. He narrowly avoided becoming the first ever bowler to concede 2 double hundreds back to back. But that doesn't take away anything from the fact that he was the lead bowler, or he was the most experienced bowler in this team, and he could not lead from the front. That's something he'll want to work on as well. The next assignment for Pakistan is the home Test series against Sri Lanka. So they'll be very eagerly let's say, looking forward to that, and they want to prove themselves by winning that series at home in front of home crowds, the first of its kind in more than a decade, right? So that's going to be very, they're going to want to win that, and that's going to be very important for them. Also, from the Test championships perspective, the points that are on offer will be very crucial for both the teams. So, all in all, we can look forward to a very tight contest there between Sri Lanka and Pakistan in Pakistan. Moving on, if you were to look at some of the news from off the field, so we heard that in the first test at Gabba between Australia and Pakistan, the umpires had missed something like 21 no balls in 2 sessions on the second day. So that's a staggering number of no balls to miss. And this sort of leads to the next point that India have appointed the third umpire to call the front foot no balls in the India versus West Indies T20 series, I think in an experimental basis. I think it might become a norm in the upcoming years, because it looks like the more pressure that's put on the on-field umpires, the more they may miss on one or the other facet. So this can only be fixed by either having the third umpire who's already in the game to call no balls, front foot no balls from bowlers, so that the on-field umpires can concentrate on all the action that happens at the other end, at the batting end. That would be a good call. So this is going to be an interesting initiative from BCCI. So let's see how that goes. In other news, Ireland's Tim Murtagh has decided to retire from international cricket. He did well for Ireland in the 2 tests that he has really represented them. And he took a 5-4 at Lords, so he'll be remembered for that. And he's a long-serving county cricket stalwart, and he will always go out on the top there. In other news, Abhimanyu Mithun took 5 wickets in 6 balls in the last over of the Syed Mushtaq Ali Trophy semi-final between Karnataka and Haryana. And Karnataka have then gone on to win the Syed Mushtaq Ali Trophy, the T20 trophy in India, second year in a row, where they beat Tamil Nadu in a very, very tight final, which they won by 1 run. So, as we had spoken in the previous episode, BCCI are actually looking to tweak some of the recommendations from Lodha committee, so that in the longer run it makes more sense. So it looks like this is going to be heard in the courts, and BCCI will await the hearing and whether these some of these recommendations can be rolled back. The chief among those are some of the retirement ages recommended, as well as the tenure break that was recommended after a 6-year cool-off period. So all of this might be repealed in the upcoming days and weeks. In other news, Mickey Arthur, who's a much traveled and a much experienced international coach, has been unveiled as the next Sri Lankan head coach. Interestingly, his first assignment is going to be against Pakistan in Pakistan. So, that might have also contributed to his appointment. We all know him as a very hard taskmaster, and he might be the right sort of a person with the experience he brings under his belt to take Sri Lanka forward. So he has taken over from Ramesh Ratnayake, the interim coach. In other news, Sardar Patel Stadium, that we know is being built at a cost of 700 crore Indian rupees, will be inaugurated with a match between World 11 and Asia 11. This has been proposed. So this is designed to be one of the biggest stadiums, if not the biggest stadium in the cricketing world, with a capacity of 110,000 seats. It's going to be a bit bigger than Melbourne Cricket Ground, which currently has a capacity of 100,000 seats. This is going to be located in Murtagh locality, and it is a very well appointed stadium. It's been designed by the Larsen and Tubro team that was also sort of in charge of some other big developments in the region. We are all eagerly awaiting to see how this stadium comes up, and how it will be once it's inaugurated. So the idea is it will be inaugurated in 2020. So the rest of the details are yet to come through. In the other news, the Karnataka Premier League fixing scandal that's coming out, a KSCA managing committee member has been arrested on suspicions of match fixing. So this comes as a real blow to the Karnataka Premier League. So Sudhindra Shinde, who was also a former Karnataka player, has been the person who's been arrested. So this means it looks like this corruption has gone quite deep, and a bit more cleanup is required before this tournament can be restaged. In a bit of a sad news, Bob Willis, the former England fast bowler and captain, has died after a prolonged illness. So our condolences to his family and his friends. So he will always remain in our minds for his match-winning performances for England, specifically the 1981 Ashes, the so-called Botham's Ashes, where at Headingley he took an 8-4 to bundle Australia out on the last innings. He was a great fast bowler, and we will always remember that long run-up of which he used to run in, and the gangly sort of a guy he was, very tall, and the locks, the gangly limbs all over the place when he delivered his bowling. So it will always stay with us. And also his acerbic, let's say, punditry at the end of his cricket career, he moved into the commentary box, and he was a very, let's say, a very straight speaking commentator and also a summarizer who was always present at the end of matches in the studio with some experts. So we will miss that, and we hope he finds a better place wherever he is now. Moving on, if we were to take a quick look at the trivia section, so the question from the previous episode was, which captain holds the record for most innings victories and how many? So the answer to this question is Graeme Smith, who as a captain has presided over 22 innings victories. So that's the highest. Kohli has 10. So this was the background for this question. That's a fantastic number of innings victories. That also shows how dominant the South African team were under Graeme Smith. The trivia question for this episode is, who was the man of the match in the last test match Pakistan won on Australian soil? So when was this match and who was the man of the match? Do write in with your answers to the question or your thoughts. You could always get in touch with us, for example, on social media, via Twitter at Armchair Pod, or using our Facebook page, or you could leave your answer as a comment to the episode on whichever podcasting app you use, Acast, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, any of these, right? And we would very much appreciate any feedback that we get about our episodes and how we can make it more appealing to our listeners and our friends out there. So with more cricket coming up, the India versus West Indies T20 series, which will begin in a couple of hours, in fact, and also much more cricket that's supposed to come in the upcoming days, not least the, let's say, the Pakistan-Sri Lanka Test series, also the England-South Africa Test series, and the Australia's, or rather the New Zealand tour of Australia. So plenty of good cricket coming up. So we do hope you guys stay tuned in. And thanks for joining. It's a goodbye from me and from Giri. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
You're listening to the Armchair Cricket Podcast.